One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so the first item is public comments. Would anyone from the public like to comment? Okay,
I don't have any opinions. I'm here to learn.
okay,
I'm
that sounds good.
curious what your thoughts are as a group and where the TOD might be going or staying. It's all. I've been at Bethel 42 years, as to probably knows, but I have seen so much change. I'm a little nervous.
I think that meeting might have been last night.
Yeah, that's oh, this charter revision.
It's okay.
It's still.
It's twice as interesting.
So tell me what they decided last night. Oh, yeah, that's the one I wanted to go to.
That's what we want to go.
Sorry about that. I was in that meeting and it was very interesting. Call me tomorrow.
And I believe it was recorded, right?
Oh, yeah.
It should be,
It was recorded,
and the minutes will be online.
and the minutes will be online.
That may be easier.
And I've been in Bethel 42 years as well. Right? I still feel like.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you for coming out.
There we go.
I
Come back anytime.
educate myself online.
All right.
Fun is zero.
By the way, you should have sold around with this.
Right.
You should. So this is the Charter Revision Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not for that.
You didn't say it?
I didn't
I've
hear
been
that.
here 45 years.
45 years. Barry, how long have you been here?
82.
62.
58.
I got you.
Since you were born?
Danbury to Bethel.
That's right. You were.
Danbury Hospital, Bethel.
Oh.
We didn't have a hospital in Bethel. Where you at?
Cliff Urchin was the last person I ever met that was born in Bethel.
Who's that?
Cliff Urchin.
Joan Brown.
Was, Charlie
Mom.
Frick was, my brother was.
Sure.
So you
Kitchen table.
All right, what, have we already reviewed our correspondence?
We have not gotten any.
All right, that is it. So just kind of continuing on from the last meeting, there was one point that we were reviewing. Oh, the minutes, I missed that. Yes, the minutes from September 4th, 2024.
Motion to approve the minutes of September 4th.
Is there a second? Second,
Second.
okay. And,
I'm going to recuse myself, Mr. Beagle.
okay,
I wasn't here.
and
I have a
any
question.
comments on
I
this?
do have a comment on. Let's see, consideration of 2019 charter revision, down to where it says C6-3B3. It's about that referendum discussion question. Should it be too high, too low, just right?
Right.
I had in my notes that we were going to table that until we talked to Board of Finance members. Did we not do that?
Well, we didn't approve it. We discussed it.
We discussed it, but it says here.
Yes. And so we're going to talk to the Board of Finance. We were going to have them come to this meeting, but since Penny from the very get-go, when we were setting up our schedule, she couldn't be here and she had strong feelings about that, about the question. I talked to the chair of the Board of Finance and he kind of agreed he could come, or his members could come to the December meeting.
But this tracker, which is very helpful, by the way, it does say on it in reference to that item that there's consensus.
I don't believe there was a consensus.
Pardon?
I don't think there was a consensus
I don't
because
think
I was going to vote against it.
There wasn't consensus, so that's a little misleading. Maybe still in the discussion or table.
Yeah, that,
Yeah,
Would be
because
more
we
accurate.
haven't voted on the changes,
Right.
but yeah, maybe we should.
there wasn't.
It was a discussion. So it doesn't affect the minutes, it's just that tracker sheet, which is not part of the minutes.
just
It
so
doesn't
that
have
it's
the minutes,
clear.
because I would like consensus still from minutes. It's the
Consensus, yes.
consensus to add just right to the current responses. It's, the consensus was to, continue the issue,
Right.
not to, yeah, to table it, because we didn't want to add it.
We didn't know what we wanted to do.
Yeah, it was just it was too protracted a discussion to take up at the time, and so we decided to just kind of stew on it and let other people talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you change consensus to consideration to add.
I just don't want it to be implied, okay, consideration.
Consideration, discussion ensued, consideration to add.
I actually disagree with that, but I'm a member of the commission. We did not vote on anything, and consensus is actually a very broad, ill-defined term. It was just the gist of the commission members towards adding a just right. That I thought there was the consensus on that, with the plans to still, everything consensus wise has not been put to a vote, and we can invite whoever you want to, and that can change. Consensus can change.
Yeah, I would like to see that sentence struck. Consensus to add just right to the current.
And we'll be picking that up at the next meeting.
Are we striking it or leaving it?
Well, you're talking about the minutes. On the minutes, you could just say consideration, discussion ensued, consideration to add just right to the current responses. Because that's what we discussed.
I think consider.
Instead of consensus.
Neutral.
Okay.
So we can do that. All right, any other comments on the minutes?
I'm gonna vote against it. But-
Against the
Well,
minutes?
who made the motion? Alice, you did, right? To accept the minutes tonight?
I made the motion to accept the.
Right, so just
minutes.
amend yours and see if Joan second your amendment, and we'll vote on that. Just amend it and take the consent.
I just want to strike the sentence. That's I'm not trying to tell, I just don't think we need to consensus.
Well, we're removing the word consensus.
So what on?
Agree to add
But we didn't consider it.
consideration.
Consideration.
Add just right.
I don't even think about that. That's right. I mean, and I'm splitting hairs in
We
this
discussed it. I mean,
discussion. I don't like the just right, so I'm very sensitive to it.
but we did talk about it.
I,
Did we not consider it? We did. So.
I know you're pushing to get that put that way, and I don't agree, but I will go ahead and go.
With
Or we could say, we
consideration.
did not talk about it.
I just go ahead and put consideration in. I don't agree with it, but go ahead.
Now,
No, I don't want to have it applied what we're having.
do we need to amend the motion?
We need to amend them.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your motion is to approve. My motion was made to approve, but yours.
Approve as amended.
I seconded the motion to approve the minute. Now, do we want to go on to an amendment? Amend the minutes?
Yeah.
All right, I move to amend the minutes to strike consensus and substitute consideration.
Okay, I'll second that. Any other discussion? That was next.
Yeah, I wasn't there, so.
It's too bad you weren't there.
So all in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Abstains, one abstention. Okay, yes.
I would suggest we talk here about moving quickly for the findings.
Yes, and I guess,
I would think that probably be best if we get I'm sure there's gonna be other items that we're gonna wanna talk to them about. While we a couple meetings, get our whole list together, and that way we can have
hopefully one or two productive conversations on a series of topics.
Okay. Others comments on that?
Did we vote on the minutes or we can vote on the amendment?
And we, oh,
You voted to accept the minutes as amended.
that's it.
Combine.
Okay, so, Pat is suggesting that instead of meeting with the Board of Finance next month, that perhaps we'll have other questions for them as we go through. And we'll want to
Make good use of
ask
their
other
time.
questions for them.
Yeah, you know, you have I'm sure it's not the only item that's been involved there, if you want their opinion. Or you probably end up taking everyone's time. You know, so then talk little things down.
All right, so we'll pause that and then we'll bring it up after the first of the year. And then one of the other items that was out there, I think was the consideration of excluding town employees from running for Board of Assessment Appeals. And I was wondering, Nick, whether you had a chance to take a look at that exclusion.
The C25?
And yes, this is C25. C2-5. And so,
Grade the Board of Finance serving on a board.
well, no, this is, if Section B currently prohibits town employees, and I'm reading from, Dan, your piece, or the piece that came from the Board of Selectmen. Currently prohibits town employees from serving on the boards of finance, planning and zoning, zoning board of appeals, and in the wetlands. Recommendation, include Board of Assessment Appeals in the prohibition. And so my question at the last meeting is, do the state statutes allow us to do that? And I did check, it's 7-421. And it looks like we don't have that authority. That we can, the state statutes allow us to prohibit town employees from serving on the land use board, the Board of Finance, or any board that supervises them.
Which statute is this?
7-421.
No, there's specifically mentioned those that here, I'm bringing it up now because I did take a look at it. I don't think that statute stops you. Remember, you can't contravene the Connecticut general statute, so you can't go against anything that's stated, but you can go further as long as it's not in contravention.
Yeah, and again, the reason this came up is, a long time ago, the charter prohibited town employees from serving on any board. And that's when Tim Burke was elected to the Board of Selectmen, and he was head of Parks and Rec. And there was a big call to say, hey, you've got to step down as Park and Rec's director because you're going on the Board of Selectmen. And our charter says any town employee cannot serve on any elected board. And then Marty Lawler researched it and found that the state law prohibits us from blocking town employees from running for any town office except for land use boards, Board of Finance, and a board that supervises their position.
Makes sense.
So
Why would it make sense then to?
I agree with the recommendation. I just don't think we've got the authority to do it.
Board of Assessment Appeals.
What we do is what the statute do because we can be more restrictive than state law.
Well, except we were more restricted in the state law than we were told that we couldn't.
That's what they said back then.
No, back then, we had a blanket prohibition on any town employee serving
On any
an elected position in any board, elected any board. And so there is a state law that says you can prohibit them from serving on the land use board, Board of Finance, or any board that supervises. So in other words, that's not an elected board. So the police chief couldn't run for the police commission.
Right.
I think there was a bunch of case laws associated with that. And I agree, you know, where there's direct supervision, you your own raise, right? But, you know, I think it comes down to a constitutional issue where both state and federal, where you can't restrict someone's right to such a degree to run for office.
I think they're having a hard time hearing you down the other end.
Speak a little louder.
Yeah, I say, that I believe there's some case law on that where you can't, you know, you can restrict someone from running for office if it has a direct impact on them, like such as, you know, you can't vote for your own raise. You can't be the chief of police and be on the board of police commission. But I think you have to be careful with it because there's a constitutional issue both on the state and federal where you can't restrict somebody from running for office.
Right.
If they don't get elected, they don't get elected. If they get elected, they get elected. Yeah, that's, you know.
So here's what that 7-421 includes. It says any municipal employee shall have the right to serve on any governmental body of the town in which the employee resides, except any body which has the responsibility for direct supervision of such employee. Notwithstanding the provisions of this section, no such employee shall serve on any of the following unless such employee is permitted to serve pursuant to provisions of a municipal charter. So in other words, the charter can opt them in, but this would be for, this is the list of land use boards.
So could we opt in Board of Assessment Appeals?
Well, it does say anybody exercising zoning powers. Right? Is that prohibited or is that allowed?
No, we can prohibit that. So that's a list of what you can prohibit.
Right. So zoning board of appeals. Okay, so we're looking at some board.
So
Board of
what-
Assessment Appeals.
If I'm hearing that correctly, because it's complete, we could add Board of Assessment Appeals because it's a charter issue. If we wanted to.
It goes back to whatever it was 20 years ago when Tim Burke was elected.
No, I get-
And he had that overall prohibition. We were told, no, that violates state statutes. So we had to revise the charter to allow town employees to serve on any board other than there's a specific list of what you can have.
Well, we just read that regulation and it said except by charter.
Yeah, I would caution us to restricting anybody from running for office that didn't have.
It's fine, I'm just.
Doesn't it seem like the constitutional right to run for office? I get that. But if we have something in the charter that says you can't run for this office if you're already on this board, or you can't serve on both, that doesn't preclude them from running. It just means that if they win, they have to drop their other position.
No, well, this is a town, this issue is, does he work for the town?
Well, but then if you would rather be on the board, you can run for the board, you can win, then you can't work for the town anymore.
This was,
Yeah, but there's,
So they still have the choice to do that. They just have to give up whatever is prohibiting them from serving.
but the state law, again, it says any municipal employee shall have the right to serve on any governmental body of the town in which the employee resides.
Okay, that's different then.
I think
And then they-
list.
the question is, do you want to just kick it back to the attorney to double check? But I think you're
I'm
right.
not entirely sure one way or another. I just thought it was sensible.
So I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with the concept, but I don't think we have authority.
I don't think they have authority either. And I'll be honest, I didn't go look at that. This was referenced for.
I mean, the only reason it gets me is I just remember the history of.
Tim, I agree with you on the prohibition for the Board of Assessment Appeals. An employee can't be prohibited from pursuant to that statute, 7-421. An employee can't be prohibited from running on the Board of Assessment Appeals. I think there were two prongs to what the recommendation was.
Yes, there is, it does go on.
So there's a prohibition on serving on other boards, correct?
Oh, yes, our current charter already prohibits town employees from serving on land use boards, Board of Finance, or any board that supervises that employee.
Yeah, but what I was saying is, if you're on the Board of Assessment Appeals or on the Board of Finance, can you serve that? I think there was a recommendation, can you serve on another board? Wasn't there a second?
Yeah, the second part of it was had to do with the Board of Finance.
Oh, I see.
So the recommendation was include Board of Finance in the prohibition, and prohibit Board of Finance members from simultaneously serving on other board or commission to prevent conflicts of interest with regard to funding. So that's the second piece. And that doesn't have anything to do with 7-4.
Oh, okay, so again, I see what you're doing. You're including, yeah, the recommendation is include the Board of Assessment Appeals and the prohibition of being on multiple boards. We're not talking about prohibiting people from running.
Correct. Employees could and should pursue the state statute.
Yeah, that's- Yeah.
So again, so looking up above, here's your recommendation. 2.2-5 eligibility for office, section B, currently prohibits town employees from serving on Board of Finance, Planning and Zoning, Zoning Board of Appeals, and inland wetlands. Recommendation, include Board of Assessment Appeals in the prohibition.
Yeah.
So we can't do that. However, we can do the prohibition of the Board of Finance serving on multiple boards. But didn't the previous Charter Revision Commission already recommend that? I think we.
Yes, it's in the red. Yes.
So we already have that in. We've already
It's
covered
in
that.
Nick's notes.
Do we have an opinion on that? Other than what's written?
I think it is. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's the Board of Finance, the tip of the spear, everything flows there from the dollars. And, you know, if you're on a commission and maybe influenced either way, especially when you're controlling the purse string, I don't see a lot wrong with it.
And then the charter already has prohibitions such as if you're on the Board of Finance, if you're on the Board of Selectmen, you can serve on no other board unless kind of authorized in the charter. So for example, under the Board of Selectmen are automatically serving on the Public Utilities Commission. But they can't go out and be on the Police Commission. They can't run for Board of Finance and be on the Board of Selectmen as well. So the charter already covers that prohibition, but it doesn't have a prohibition.
Well, is not the first selectman ex officio member of every board?
Yes,
So that
but it's included in the charter, so the charter, so it says you can't serve on anything else except as provided in the charter.
Is there anything, you know, there anything where it would be a pro as a con? Is there any reason why that would be beneficial to have someone from Board of Finance?
Well, I'll give you the background. This came up when a member of the Board of Finance was also the chairman of Parks and Recreation. And so he would have to recuse himself from voting on the budget because he's the chair of that segment of the budgets. So that became a problem.
There's just a potential conflict.
Yeah. So.
Because any budget that comes up, if you have some allegiance to another board or a membership of another board, could potentially create that.
Also, it's one of the most powerful in the town.
Right, but remember C2-5 also means appointments. So the first selectman, if you're on the Board of Finance, the first selectman cannot appoint you to a Park and Rec Commission. That's what this says. So you can't be elected or appointed.
Can't serve.
Right, you
Right.
can't serve
Yeah.
on elected or
Or
appointed
appointed.
board or commission.
All right, so that second piece of it, we've already covered, right? For the Board of Finance. We did. Okay. So do you want to go on, just continue with the Board of Selectmen's recommendation? So that was the first one on the list. So yeah, next
So
one.
are we basically saying you're not gonna, we don't have the authority to do these, that's an appeal part?
Yes,
Correct.
So vacancies. And this is a new section. So this section cites the manner of filling a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen prescribed by the general statutes. Cites the acting first selectman assumes the role of the first selectman until a town election or special election. And then section C 3-3 should be updated to clarify the vacancy for a member other than the first selectman will be filled in the manner prescribed by Connecticut general statutes. Okay, let's take a look at that. So right now it's showing under C, 3-3C, vacancies on the board of selectmen shall be filled in the manner prescribed by Connecticut general statutes. So you're suggesting that we just cite the statute?
I want to go back here. Okay, so here's where the issue was. I guess we would be adding the reference in C 3-3C and adding in vacancy on the board of selectmen other than the first selectman. Because what happens is when the first selectman is out of the office, meaning the office of first selectman on the building, right? The acting first selectman who was elected to begin the term becomes acting in 4 categories, right? First one is when instructed, so by letter. Second one is automatically, if like something happens to me and I'm in the office for 30 days, it's automatic. If the board of selectmen shall declare an emergency exists, right? If there's something that happens and I can't be reached. And the last one is when there's a vacancy in the office, which has happened, right? When the vacancy happens, that person becomes acting first selectman. And then there's a town election, a special election. Obviously, what happened a year ago was they tried to put somebody in the role and swear in the acting first selectman as selectman. Or the acting first selectman as first selectman. I can't do that, no. So to just clear it up, I think the reminder would be when there's a vacancy on the board of selectmen, right? Because when they're talking about the board of selectmen, they're talking about the 2 remaining selectmen. That is clearly spelled out in state statute. I think that's just what we have to clear up. Because I don't know if somebody looked at that and said, go by state statute. They didn't even go by state statute.
Well, I'd like adding a citation.
Yeah.
And do we need, because this is a charter, if they were to change that section of the law, would they keep the same numbering, or should we say something like, you know, Connecticut General Statutes 5-4B, or no, that's the charter.
So I'm just saying, if they went to C 3-3C, right, vacancies on the board of selectmen shall be filled in the manner prescribed by the Connecticut General Statutes. I think adding just a piece of it other than the first selectman would totally make it clear.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the board of selectmen, you know, it's basically the vacancies are filled unless it says somewhere else in the chart that comes in, which acting first selectman does. And yeah, so I just think that would have cleared up any kind of confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, it was clear before, and I think it is clear, but that one little piece leaves it and has a little ambiguity to it.
And
So that's why we meant it.
And just to be clear then, now if there is, this has happened in the past, if there's a vacancy in one of the other 2 selected,
Right.
then that seat gets filled by appointment by the
Remaining 2.
Right.
and then
Wait, say that again?
if let's say, well, we'll go back to history. There was,
No, just repeat your sentence. I followed it.
if there was a vacancy of 2 of the selectmen, not first selectmen,
One of the 2.
one of the 2 selectmen, then there were the other selectmen and the first selectmen to make an appointment to fill the vacant seat.
And that's what's spelled out in the
And
Connecticut
then
General Statutes.
if
Is that Connecticut general statute?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's also how we did it years ago. And then there was a special, then someone petitioned, I think it was Phil Gallagher, petitioned for a special election to fill that seat. So the appointment lasted only up until the special election. And then the special election then filled the seat.
So the Connecticut general statutes, is that blind to the number of selectmen we have, whether we have 3 or 5, the Connecticut statutes will still work?
Technically, yes.
So it just says the remaining board of selectmen appointment.
Would, the remaining board of selectmen would choose the person, and then there's a petition required, or not, a petition option. I think that's 15 days.
And then where in this document are the special rules spelled out for selectmen?
So if you look on, section C5-4, it talks about what the acting first selectman is.
Right, that comes later.
Right. But that acting first selectman is what determines how a first selectman is replaced. The acting first selectman statute, if a first selectman, if there's a vacancy in that office, then there's a special election forthwith. And the person who is the acting first selectman assumes the duties of acting first selectman. During the issue is right now, we're 3, that means there's 2 people, it's still a quorum, but there's a perception that nothing gets done. But the truth is, they just have to work together. And it's happened many times. They just have to work together. If there were a bigger board, then you could, play politics.
Or not.
Or not. Yeah,
Okay, so that's, so we want to reference it back here
I prefer not.
where you're adding, you want to add except the first selectman. And do we want to say see section 5, whatever, so they know where to look, or do we just want to say, which is described elsewhere in the document?
That's more a question. Do you even need to add the reference or just?
I mean, by putting it in there, it gives you a roadmap to making sure you look at the right statute.
Right, or at least saying spelled out elsewhere in this document so that you know to go look there.
Yeah, it's raising our charter. There are references to state statute once in a while, but I haven't seen many references to other parts of this charter per se.
Okay.
What do you think?
No, I mean, if you want clarity, because it's been a point that has had some uncertainty in the past, at least with the special election, you can certainly add a reference to the general statutes.
Well, can you make a reference to, should you make a reference to the section of the chart?
You could.
Okay, that's good. So you guys.
Yeah, I mean, if the sections aren't going to change or whatever, I think it makes sense to spell it out there, because then not only is it clear that, wait a minute, there's a special rule, here's where I go to find it. This might not happen again for 50 years. Why not make it easy for them?
Yeah, I think if it's happened, let's make it crystal clear what the procedure is.
So then what you're suggesting is that 3-3C would say vacancy on the board of selectmen except first selectman or office of first selectman shall be filled in the manner prescribed by Connecticut general statutes. And then we can put in CGS 5-4B4.
Not the CGS, but charter.
Right.
This one.
Right.
And that charter section C5 is really talking about how to determine who is the acting first selectman.
Let me throw one question. Connecticut general statutes changes quite often. Maybe not quite often. But it could be fine with the scenario if you reference Connecticut general statutes and changes like that. Just using that verbiage just for the sake of ease, are we better off being more inclusive in our line?
Oh, I thought we were talking about it, referencing to the part of the charter.
We're talking about the charter. I think what he's saying, instead of saying just general statutes where it is now, and leaving the statute, do it. Take what's in the statute now and spell it out in the charter.
Yeah. Or just make the citation rather than leaving the words.
Well, I think leaving it up to Connecticut general statutes is sufficiently, because if they do move things around,
Yeah, that is. the
Yeah, I
problem.
agree.
because they may repeal a section and then put it somewhere else. I think at the point, if we wanted to keep it the same way, we could take the whole section and put it in there. I don't know that we have to do that, but I see where you're going. I see where you're laying down there. So it'd be a big chunk.
Broad reference to the general statutes is always kind of a fail-safe in the event of a statutory revision.
Right.
Yeah, I think we only have to say Connecticut general statutes, period. And then you have to go look every time because it could be a different place.
That could apply to just about everything in the charter.
But you say that change was contrary to what we're trying to achieve.
Well, with the selectmen, listen, the board of selectmen, the role of selectmen is not meeting the charter or town, or statute for town government. It's going to be there. And I think right now it's pretty spelled out just how any board of selectmen would operate. It probably would make it simple to leave it in that way, and then whatever big changes we make in the future, whether it's not making 5 or making 5, or whatever, the statutes might be very supportive. I was going back to try to look up the statute, but as I recall, it was pretty clear the other folks get to choose. There's a 15-day period, I think. You can do a petition. I don't think it's going to change. But I understand.
But what we want to do is avoid the confusion that happened last time.
Yeah.
So that all of a sudden, the actual first selectman sworn in as first selectman.
But the confusion was because what is it? Board of Selectmen was the acting first selectman. That was the confusion.
Right, there were really two phases to that.
Right, because a quote unquote board of selectmen, you could say, well, that anybody on the board, but it's very clear when the acting first selectman, or if the first selectman left, what happens? Acting becomes acting.
Right.
Because that person, by the way, that's because that person was elected. The last thing,
But they were not elected to first selectman. They were
no, but they were quote unquote elected, they were elected as selectmen, they were elected as a selectman. And then every term they were elected as acting first selectman or acting selectman by the whole board. So I think that continues that. The actors were officially appointed.
Yeah.
And it goes by default to say that acting person is in fact the elected official of the town government authority.
100%. If all the authority that the first selectman had is now the acting person.
Other than you spelled out.
No.
Just assume.
Yeah.
Especially in time of the crisis, you had to make it declaratory.
Yeah, if I couldn't be located, a little bit easier, but if the first selectman could not be located, the two of them could just get together and say, all right, you're acting. And you make the decisions until I turn up.
Goodness, in case who's ever the vice president, right?
Yeah.
Gets the box with the combination in it.
So then in 3-3, should there be a reference then to filling a vacancy for the first select?
I just did that. Vacancies of the board of selectmen, other than the first selectman, shall be filled in the manner prescribed in Connecticut General Statute. See section 5-4. Yeah, I think it's very clear.
So do the Connecticut general statutes spell out how the position of the first selectman should be filled in vacancies?
Yes, I think there's some reference, but the charter trumps the reference.
Yeah, the
Okay.
charter goes beyond what the Connecticut general
Okay.
statutes says. And,
So we're allowed to be different than the Connecticut state statutes as long as.
Yeah.
the business can't be contrary.
Right, can be contrary. Think of it as being like more restrictive but not less restrictive.
Okay,
Okay, so again, going back, that 3-3C, vacancies on the board of selectmen, except the first selectman, shall be filled in the manner prescribed by the Connecticut general statutes.
right. And then,
But then you've got another sentence. there,
Right.
About
Just say C section, C5,
But C5-4B has to do with the vacancy in the first selectman.
but that's the point.
Yeah.
We're just making it clear.
so say that in the second sentence, say for
Yeah, we
first,
need a second
for
sentence.
first selectman, see section blah, blah, blah of this document.
Okay,
That just makes it very clear that there are two policies, two procedures. Here's what you go to Connecticut state statutes for one of them, you go to this section and this document for the other.
Yeah.
And if you want to be
But
even
for
more
first
specific,
selectman, you were filling by 5-4B4.
Right.
And then for.
You
for
should say
selectmen-
5-4 because it's the active
Yeah.
selectmen
Yeah.
section.
Right.
You don't need all the details.
Right. But you can be even more precise here by saying the vacancy in the first selectman position is filled by the acting first selectman. See section 5, blah, blah, blah.
But that's not technically true.
That's a temporary fill.
The person has not filled the vacancy. The vacancy is filled by special election. So the acting becomes acting, it has the role of acting, all the powers,
True.
but the vacancy is still a vacancy
Okay.
until.
And down in section 5,
Still is a
whatever,
special
it's, that's where it says special election. Okay.
Right.
It's all there.
180 days prior.
Yeah,
Right.
so, yeah, 180 days now becomes the general.
So should we say for vacancies in the office of first selectman,
See section, or refer to section.
the office
5-4.
is filled. Right. I see 5-4.
Do your magic.
All right.
I'll take the letter. Yeah.
Put the name of that section in there too. That way, if they ever renumber it, they can still find it.
Well, we won't renumber it.
But yeah, if we renumber it, we'll change all the, you guys will change it.
But it sounds like this is the only place where we've ever referenced another section.
No, we haven't. There are other sections.
All right, so they'll know they have to look for it.
Before board of selectmen.
We won't, but 50 years from now, our grandchildren might be less smart.
Guaranteed. Okay, board selectmen. So go 3-4. Okay, it's a 2-year term. Now, the board of assessment appeals is a 2-year term and the registrar vote is a 2-year term. But other than that,
What section are we looking at now? Sorry.
on 3-4, we're looking at the recommendations from the board of selectmen. And this is with regard to C3-4.
Was that documented in the email? I don't think it was. Or is that the one?
There's
It was the
three
one
members
prior
of the
to.
Selectmen consisting of a first selectman and 2 selectmen, all of whom shall be elected at regular biennial town election. So one of the things we were talking about with this was making that a 4-year term rather than biennial. And my hope or my comment to this particular paragraph was to commence in 2027.
Yeah, you'd need a delay. But let's just talk about the 4-year
I'm
term.
not gonna vote on it till after.
We're gonna vote at the next election, so you're right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want it to take place at that time.
No, it would be the next.
Yeah,
That's 2027.
and usually, I think usually the verbiage is beginning with the election, following the adoption of this charter.
Yeah.
Whatever gets adopted.
Yeah.
The municipal election, yeah.
So what are the pros and cons to this discussion? First off, it can't be anything other than four, right? So it's defined.
As we need it, as well. It could be 6, that's crazy.
That's for US.
Well, yeah, we have to do
Oh, it's 2 or 4.
Yeah, reasonably. Obviously, this makes you I can say why this is important. It's honestly important. But coming to the office, obviously, you need an opportunity to have. It's very. It's hard. The worst part about it is the uncertainty it causes with the town employees. That what I've noticed is, you know, they're very uncertain from the text, and that ambiguity is really hard to do. And, you know, they won't work, sometimes they don't bring things forward, maybe it's good, or maybe not. If they're worried about, they like the first selectman, maybe they're not going to bring something forward that's controversial, which the first selectman should be making that call, right? I think it really kind of defeats the program. I think it takes 4 years to make a vision and somebody coming in new with it. I think it takes a good time. You know, the first third, so now turn around and run again. I don't think it makes any sense. I know one of the things they talked about is they want somebody at the top of the ticket. We kind of talked about that. If that's the case, we do a 5-member board of selectmen. Because at the end of the day, the best thing I think for the town is to have that, that opportunity for 4 years. We didn't put it in here, I even support term limits. You know, I know some people don't like that concept, but, you know, doing the 2-term limit for a selectman, then if you really want to get rid of somebody, you got one shot, and if
We might be pushing too many buttons at the same time. If
Could
we
be.
consider term limits, I think that it's a big swallow as it is. The 4-year term makes sense because all the rest of them are 4-year terms.
special power.
And knowing how long it takes to learn that job before you actually get your stride, 4 years makes a lot of sense. 5-member board of selectmen, I think we've all discussed over and over again, the transparency that it provides. I think there's much greater transparency with 5 people.
Yeah.
I
I think, one of the downers to go to the 5 is that people are concerned about, like you're moving almost towards like a
mayor council.
mayor council government. What happens then? Does the board of finance eventually get watered down, or like, is that, it's one of those slippery slope arguments. I'm not crazy about the 5 personally, but I'll leave that to you guys.
You don't have a working board of finance. You
Yeah.
haven't reduced the board of finance.
Yeah.
Which, it's not a council, but it gives, 3 people is really untenable in some cases.
Well, but it also helps us, it does really help us get things done and not, one of the arguments against a 5 is those can become quite contentious, right? And you have a check and balance in the board of finance, planning and zoning, like you have a lot of other board, like check and balances because we're town government.
I think with the town our size, a lot of them, as Matt pointed out, I believe, is that a town our size tends to move toward a mayor council form of government way down the road. And it won't be, it may not even be in our lifetime when that happens. But I do think 5 people allows much more diversification in opinion. When I was first selectman and I had a Democratic first selectman, Judy used to say to me, I can count. And that's not really fair. It's not really an open discussion. When 2 people have an agreement, if 3 people have an agreement, that's much more of a consensus.
Mhm.
That's much more, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying.
I'm not trying to persuade you one way or another, I'm just trying to.
But again, the board of selectmen didn't put it forth because I think we felt like probably more time. Now your purview of this is the vision.
And you're asking about the pros and cons. Of course, having a 2-year term allows the voters every 2 years to decide whether to reelect the first select. So that's there. If you look at that wall with all the photographs of the past selectmen, in almost every case, a first selectman is given a second term by the board.
But that doesn't change, that doesn't change what happens to the town and what doesn't get done because somebody's worried about keeping their job instead of doing their job.
Correct.
That is just tell you in the role.
And it wasn't a problem for Matt Knickerbocker. He was reelected time and time again.
I understand this, but it's just spending time running because time running empty.
And
He's the one who put this forward.
Oh, I know he put it forward. And then Cliff Urgent was elected.
And there are other towns who've done the same thing because of that reason.
When you said 5 members of the board of contentions, I argue that's a good thing. Because if you have 3 people now that are always agreeing, that's exactly why we're saying 5 is a good thing. I think we want more discussion, if not more disagreement. I think there's a greater chance of it there when you only have 3. So I think that's a pro, not a con.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that if we're getting in that argument, debate. I'm not married to it either way. I have concerns about the 5. I think we're moving towards council government. Right now, we have a lot of our power dispersed, right? The power is not all really in the board of selectmen, no matter what, because we're a town meeting form of government.
So how
We have the power.
Given that, how do you sit in and change? If we keep the board of finance the way it is and all the other missions the way they are,
Yeah.
and they're gonna operate autonomously anyway, what's the downside do you think to having then 5 opinions instead of 3 opinions? What's the
Listen,
downside?
I've just heard that in some cases, it does make the board of selectmen more contentious take more time to deliberate, more political. That's just my opinion,
More
because there's more drama between the two parties sometimes. I'm just saying that I do have my concern. Listen, if we're gonna go on to a council for whatever time, I'm ready for that, but I do think this is.
I don't see one leads to the other. I think this is instead. Because a town, a mayor council form of government, I don't believe that we're here there. We're here yet with that. I think that's a generational way. I really do mean that, because even though I think it's untenable that we have a town meeting form of government where nobody shows up, I still think this is a positive step forward, particularly since there's staggered voting, that you get fresh. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
It gives you an option to have more diversity on the board as well. You've got 5.
Potentially, but it could just mean they reelect the same people, but still every 2 years, but still an election every 2 years.
As there will be anyway.
Right.
On that particular.
Well, now let's talk about this topic,
Yeah,
that makes it interesting, yeah.
On that particular topic, I can say from conversations I've had that some people that would like to get involved in town government are reluctant to, because there's no changing of the guard. The politics are always the politics. The criers are the criers, the strong political opinion people are there. And some people just don't want to get involved because it's so ingrained. I mean, you look at some of our boards in this town, people have been there way beyond decades, 20, 30 years. And some of the young people that I've talked to, well, I want to go with a bunch of old ladies, or, you know, they don't reflect my view. And, you know, it doesn't, my point is, old ladies, old men, you know what I'm saying. But, you know, but you know where I'm.
I do.
And I think it invites, I think when you have that, that's one of the benefits to, you know, having more of an open dialogue.
It is hard to get people to run.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, what did this?
Yeah, basically their cycle of life. Yeah.
Right. I mean, can we
Yeah, on the other hand, it is difficult sometimes to find people qualified who want to run for office. I think as they can see,
Oh, yeah.
people, we have difficulty finding qualified people who are interested. Now, they may say they want to run, but, you know, when we put out the notice,
that is the.
I could just say that some of
It's
the young
easier to
people
find
I've
someone
talked
who's
to,
hired to work.
Well, but for a part-time job too, we're talking about the second select, you know, the non-first selectman on the board of selectmen, it's a part-time job. That's, I mean, it's a very heavy-duty part-time job, but it's a part-time job, so you could ostensibly attract younger people so that they could have a job during the
But
day.
it's not, it's, like, I don't even look at it as a job. I mean, it's,
What is it, 6,000?
fine.
No, I'm not.
You're kind of sharing the work, you know, you're 5 versus 3, so.
Yeah, but I think I'm just listening to what they're saying. Getting people to actually run for office. I've got what?
We're all
5
finding
vacancies.
that problem.
Right, we got all kinds of vacancies.
I mean,
it's
for
all-
God's sakes, you ran opposed. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like,
I don't know, I think it's all about the way you market it, and I think there's a stigma that goes on with young people in town where if they don't see other young people, then it's hard to get that one young person to be in. And I think, yeah, market it a little differently. You know, parties are changing in this country, obviously, in a lot of different ways. And I think there's some opportune times and maybe be able to get a lot of these young people involved. Different opinions. I tend to be more traditional, maybe I can pick up my mouth, but you know,
I think they're becoming involved with such kids and all politics are local.
yeah.
They're very excited about national politics. They're involved in that.
I think this is a conversation.
Let's do that.
We have two.
I mean, right now, that's probably my fault because
but there is part of that philosophical discussion of leadership and how we want to see incremental changes in Bethel to move forward. I think one of the things that stuck with me about Matt's presentation is he said most towns are moving in this direction because it doesn't rock the boat too much in terms of completely restructuring how you do things. We still have a town meeting form of government. You're adding 2 people and it's still an odd number. They're gonna still vote every 2 years, except for first selectman. So it does give a voice to the general public. It gives more of a voice to the general public in some respects, but the every 4 years, in my thinking, is a no-brainer.
Well, I'd like to, can we switch topics to that particular?
That's what we're on, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's probably easier to talk about one separately from the other.
Yeah.
Do the 4-year term, do the
Yeah, that's fine.
five person board.
Can I ask 2 questions, Dan? Okay, when you first come in, you were totally green. Which could happen, right? We can have somebody who just like we come in, this guy, never, you know, popular guy, just like.
We have the most popular gas station. in town.
So, right, so how long do you think it would take somebody, you know, a relatively sharp guy to come in and understand the government? 2 to 3 months?
You know, honestly, I think the cycle is like a year.
A year.
Because what I noticed, okay, so I came in a very good position. I had like a background in business, leadership, all that. I've been in the legislature 6 years. I knew where a lot of the resources were. So like Matt even said one time, I was probably one of the more prepared people walking in the door. But even the day I sat down, I felt extremely prepared and I was kind of moving through it. But I would say, definitely I was hit by things I didn't know. So
Your first year,
So-
it's really the learning curve.
and I would say almost the first sight, because I would say the first year from February on was actually pretty good. I didn't feel like pressured and things got moving along. I think it was when I went into like the second year that there were like newer things. It was the first time I had started the whole budget process, right? It was the first time I had done the whole review process where I had personnel issues with all the different, like I had all this stuff. So I would say, yeah, I would say that right now, I mean, I'm in a different kind of learning curve. Like this is my first full year.
Now you're
And I'm well
more
prepared. I'm very proactive.
proactive than, yeah.
But I would say that if anybody else had come in here, you probably would have had to rely a lot more on, there is no other, we're not a town administrator. We don't have town administrator. We don't have anybody who's a COO, right? Coming in the past, our CFO or finance person, was very back in the day, did a lot to run the town. And Brad has been very strong. So that was the person kind of coming in, relying on what's happening in the town, and the departments were good, right? So, but then I uncovered more and more and more that I had to do, and I learned a lot more, even being prepared. So I really say the first year, somebody, if they have no experience, is going to have a tremendous learning curve. Some people may take longer.
Which
answer
is
that
still
also?
seven. Okay,
Yeah.
Because I came in after having been on planning and zoning for 16 years. And there were 2 major building projects that got me elected, essentially, the library and the high school. And so my job was to get them both to referendum. And I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how to handle that. The minutia of running the town on a day-to-day basis there was just a huge amount of subtlety in all of it, where you actually had to learn what was important to Park and Rec, what was important to
priority.
what they really wanted. I had to constantly meet with departments anyway, but even more so since I hadn't been a part of the culture of the town downtown, working in this municipality. So you have, it's getting to know people and what they need, because we're all public servants, whether we're volunteers or elected, or paid officials. You're all public service, so you have to find out what people need, and your job is to deliver as much of that as you possibly can.
A lot of delegation.
If you're lucky.
But here's the other issue. It's not that easy to delegate. We're a municipality, we run really, really long. I will tell you, there are a lot of things I have to do myself that I would love to be able to delegate. We don't have the bodies, we don't have the budget. And that's because every year the school budget is small. For years, that's that. It really, 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 like I can say right now, I'm so thankful I had that running year last year to this one. Like, I'm so glad I'm not running this year. I mean, I'll be running next, right? But I'm so glad I had more time to get my feet under me And I was extremely prepared. I mean, I don't mean that, in a way. I really believe walking into it, I have a lot of skills, I have a lot of experience that just kind of helped. Because now I am operating at a better level, I'm doing more across the state, I'm doing more strategic vision, CEO kind of things, which is what the first step should do. And, you know, I'm trying to rely on others and HR to do all the personnel stuff, but I'm still doing that too.
Okay.
So it does take a chunk of time.
So let's just say with your level of skill set.
Yeah.
Which is probably more than others coming in, but somewhere in the middle of the gas station guy, right? You know, so,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
so if, at what point in that venture do you start really considering, or should I, let me back up. At what point of that 2-year appointment do you start thinking about re-election?
Pretty quick.
So you're into it
Pretty
a
quick. You
year?
can't help it. You can't help it because, you know,
Other people do, if you don't.
yeah.
Okay. So that,
I'll tell you right now, so I'm already thinking about what I need to do for my next campaign here in October. And I'll probably file in October for next year.
for next
Already.
year.
I won't be actively doing the law, but as soon as the November election's over, I've got to start raising money.
And what percentage of time is taken months before that? So what percentage of time do you really have to go where I would say a large percentage of your efforts
Yeah.
is election?
It's
Is it the last 3 months, the last 2
It's
weeks?
not so much a time issue, next summer, but it'll be dribs and drabs. Because I'll have to raise money, and I'll have to be ready.
Yeah.
Because you have to, yeah. I won't be crazy, worried about crazy moments and stuff. Like the extra time, it's not the time stuff that gets you. It's the uncertainty, it's the activity, it's, you know, town employees, wondering who's gonna be here next.
So
That's-
is it safe to say a year out, you're consciously working on your re-election?
Oh, yeah, you start.
Okay.
But I'm also not saying I'm not affecting my job. I'm doing my job. It's a time issue. It's not a time issue. It's an attention issue. And it's a uncertainty issue. It's hard basically now to carry through vision, right? Because you got 2 years, right? You got all these great things going. It takes a little bit more time to do a lot of these, because it takes time to do things, right? It takes a lot of time to get grants for things, to start projects. Like, we're finishing up things that even Matt's started.
So you may not want to admit it, but it would be common sense to me that some of your business decisions are going to self-preservation. Whether that's from a totally personal standpoint of having a paycheck or accomplishing the goals that you set out to do when you started.
Because at the same time, if I'm gonna do something controversial, but I really believe it's right for the town, it's a heck of a lot easier doing it now. And then having some time to communicate it. Like, this is why I did it, this is why it's the right thing for the town. I do think there's chilling off, I think, for some people. Now, I'm a little bit bullish on that. Like, I told people last year when I started this, I'm not gonna make the political decisions. I wanna know what's right, I wanna know what your opinions are, I wanna move forward. And I'm the one who decides to take the hit or not. And that's.
You'd be an idiot to do hugely controversial
Yeah.
action. or
Taking on the board of
decisions
ed
6
6
months ahead of
months.
time.
Right.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
Well, I'll be honest, right? One of the things we're gonna talk about fire commission.
Right.
And so fire stuff is a very tricky thing. Right? And there you go. But we have to look at it for the town's sake. And I'm moving forward with it, knowing, you know, I'm not
So-
being peril.
So let's go fast forward now. Let's take those scenarios. What's basically what I understand you laid out to me. Anybody who's got some experience in town government coming in, your first year, you're really kind of getting the lay of the land, you're figuring out your plan of action, you put your fires out, you have to know the players, you're trying to get things in action. But shortly thereafter, you really have to start thinking about self-preservation and election again. So now let's go the other way now. In a 4-year term, how does that change? And there's a lot of other pros and cons I think we could hit about that because, you know, Mr. Beeble mentioned about, you know, people want a choice.
Right.
So maybe we can segue into that, but let's finish how a 4-year term is actually not only beneficial to you, but to the public, and pros and cons to that conversation.
Well, one thing, I think there's a natural part of it that you're less likely to be worried about the hard part of running because now you're 4 years away.
So first year,
So
you
first
got 3 years
year,
away.
you got your hands fine. Second year, you're going game.
Second and third year, you get a lot.
Second year, you're getting stuff done. Because now you have time to take these things and get them done. You know, like this whole, the idea that we're a threat, if we don't have somebody every 2 years is not true. It takes time to screw things up because it does take time to get any meaningful work done. So if you look at what governors have done in the past, right, any executive role, they try to come in and do things that are controversial in the beginning because they believe it's right, and you're you have time now to communicate why you've done it, like what's going on. I mean, I'm talking about the Labor fire or something like that. Just one example. So I really do think that it allows people to be the best they can in the beginning without worrying about running. We say self-preservation. What politicians will often say is, well, if I really believe I'm the right person for the job, then I need to stay in position. That's something. But they're doing it because they want to stay there because they feel like they're the right person for the job. So it's a little more than just self-preservation, right? That's something
It
justified.
starts something they want to finish.
It starts something they want to finish.
So in 2 year, your decisions are prefaced with kind of what's popular. You gotta consider, what's the pushback and how's it gonna affect you.
It's not quite as pedestrian as that, quite honestly. There's just, you realize that if you don't start communicating that you're interested in getting, a second term or third term or whatever, if you don't start actually working toward it, people forget.
Yeah, right.
It's not on their minds until all of a sudden at the last minute, they will have discovered that they've heard more from one person than another. To me, it's the opportunity to finish what you started because municipal government takes longer than you think it does. It really does. So it's just,
It's frustrating.
So can we flip the conversation for a second? Or let me just make one statement, can I make a statement about it? I've done some research on this and I try to really look at things objectively. And I know that the research that I did out of all the Fairfield County towns, I think there's 6 or 7 that are 4 year. And they tend to be mid-sized towns, kind of like our size, that do it. And the conversations I've had with a few of the selectmen, because I'm, in that environment, I know some of them, and they have said it, kind of what you're reflecting is that they can actually get some work done. Now, besides maybe you have a comment to this, I was going to flip my role to say, some people have come to me and said, hey, Pat, I don't agree with your position. We the people in town, if we get a dud in the selectmen, we're stuck with it. What are we going to do? We want to be able to get rid of it.
I can answer that question first. If we have 5 members on the board of selectmen instead of 3, you get a better chance of counteracting a bad first selectman. Because you've got, first of all, you've got the churn happening in those people. If they are still every 2 years, you can get more people in there that are stronger to counteract whatever is going on at the first selectman and say if that's a bad thing going on. So I think that you can mitigate that sort of thing there. And as far as being stuck with someone for 4 years, Dan made good points, and we all just calculated that out. Year 1, you're learning, year 2, you're getting shit done. Year 4, you're getting ready to be elected. But I want to speak to something that Dan mentioned. If there's something controversial that he believes is right for the town, he's going to put it forward. So that's the case of a good first selectman doing what's right for the town, but knowing it's going to cause churn and chaos in the town because anything with the fire department is going to be caused.
Who's laying on the
That's
floor?
an example.
Right.
And it's not only the first selectman position that's going to be up for re-election and going to be affected by that, but it's all the downforce as well. The Board of Finance is going to be involved in a fight, in a fire decision. And doing that in an election year means some people might not get elected because they're going to have to make decisions that are right for the town, but the town doesn't know that yet. And I would really rather have that kind of churn going on every 4 years instead of every 2 years. So just mitigating that kind of chaos, but it's still going to happen. There's still going to be controversy, but it's not going to affect re-election on that position and on other boards as well. So let's keep the chaos to every 4 years instead of every 2 years.
If you get here's the other thing, if you get a first selectman who's a dud, there was a problem, that's also going to carry down to the Board of Finance election. If you've got an independent, let's say, I'll say no part, independent, and they're not good or they're controversial, that's probably a bad example because it's going to be a party. It's going to be Democrat or Republican. And that's gonna flow over to whoever the board of finance. They're gonna be like, oh, this guy's an idiot. Let's not put somebody there partying. There's gonna be pushback.
Yeah.
You know, and I think no matter how much the term is at, there's gonna be people up every 2 years for something. And the board of finance is really the biggest powerhouse.
Are there opinions on this board for the 2 years?
Well,
Like, express your thoughts.
Well, the one thing I wanted to mention is that when you take a new job, when you're promoted to a job, for that first year, you're putting in a hell of a lot of hours to get past the learning curve. And you've been doing that. You've been working long hours to get there. But then in future years, you're probably not going to have to work quite as many hours because you're not quite there. But there is, I don't like the idea of a recall. I just looked down at Congress.
There is no recall in the state of Connecticut.
I thought someone mentioned recall.
You know, I had mentioned it earlier on, I don't know whether it was in conversation with the deli or what, but that was one of the things that people had said that they would support it if there was a way to get them out. And I said, and then someone said to me, that's not possible in Connecticut. So I don't know.
So,
But
okay.
Karen's scenario may satisfy some of that concern too.
I think there are enough checks and balances that if you've got it done for selectmen, he doesn't have all the power, he or she doesn't have all the power.
But he's still running the every day of the town hall. He's still in charge of HR. He's still in charge of
Yes.
every big project that happens. He's the guy that's calling the shots.
Yes,
I mean,
but if he's not doing it, then what happens?
Or if he's doing it.
Or if he's doing it badly, that's our problem. Right.
Yeah.
I just think it does take a little bit of time to send something over. Like, if you have a bad first selection or somebody's like, a little chart, you could have people want to be problem.
And if somebody's
And we've had that in
elected,
recent history.
they've never been tested.
Yeah, but most municipalities.
So there's, you know,
I could speak to that.
most jobs that you run for, there's a probationary period.
Yeah.
Where the employer can never interview in the first 6 months.
Yeah, but
Okay, wait,
it's hard to-
let
I think that's
me,
the apples and
let me
oranges.
give you a specific example. I was in for 2 years. There was something very controversial in the budget that happened.
somebody didn't like you when you started.
And so something controversial came up in the second year. They had a no too little of a budget. They voted, all the education people came out and voted no too low. Because the board,
The Board of Finance.
the Board of Education can get to the 10% raise on their budget, and the Board of Selectmen turned around and said no way. So they went out and they voted no, which never works.
Right.
And then they voted me out of office because they thought I supported it. Never mind the fact that, as you said, the Board of Finance were the ones who took that big cut. But I was the figurehead, so I took the hit. That's
That is the
okay.
trend.
If I had had a 4-year term, I would have then had all of those people that came to me 3 months later and said, I made a terrible mistake, I'm terribly sorry. And my answer was, okay, thank you. But no, it wasn't. But there is that hysteria that sometimes happens around a certain issue that does damage. So we ended up with someone who may or may not have been as effective as the town needed. And I'll just say it that way.
That was very polite.
Don't even start.
That's the concept.
That's a whole other issue,
Right.
but.
But didn't do any work.
But you got a second term.
Right, but didn't do any work. That's right. But that's the
Well,
point.
the voters had a chance, and then the following term, he was out, but his own party.
So what you've offered so far, from what I understand, is if it's a 2-year party, 2-year term, you're saying the first year he's working hard, the second year he kind of knows it doesn't have to work as many hours.
No, I'm saying.
Oh, no, I'm hearing 2 cell phones.
I mean, that's-
for 2 years.
Learn the job, and you don't learn the job, like.
It is the hardest.
I'm gonna say, I don't necessarily agree. It seems like government, the responsibilities on small government are tenfold what they were. Every year, it just compounds, all of the mandates. So you could be in that office for.
If I did not have to run for office in that second year, I would have been a much better first selectman. I really would have.
So what else
And
are the
just to
reasons
get the
for
job
the
done.
two? What are the, what else are the reasons for the two? Just put the cards on the
To
table.
give the voters a chance to change first selectman if necessary. But again, look at that law.
Right.
The first selectman, going back, yeah, number two, and then one, if you want to talk about Ed Mills, you can't count.
What
Yes,
was-
he was-
Why?
No, go
I,
ahead.
I was about to explain before you said why. So Ed Mills was a first selectman. His own party didn't endorse him as their nominee for the second term. So yes, he lost, but he didn't even get his own party's nomination. So I don't count him because his party sunk him.
So what if we'd been stuck with him for 4 years? What if we had a 4-year term at that time? What would
I
happen?
just-
But the better part is the party was able to not endorse him because they felt like he wasn't doing his job. So 2 years into it, we decided he wasn't doing it, but there was this safety valve that says, oh, we want him out.
After 2 years, that's what I'm saying. What would have happened if you couldn't automatically get him out after 2 years? If we were stuck with him for 4 years?
You stuck with him for 4 years.
We were stuck with the other one for 4 years. Who didn't?
No, he got reelected after 2.
I know, but.
But he wasn't in jail the second time.
But
He wasn't.
the voters made the decision.
We all.
But the voters.
The same voters, the same good voters.
There's the right way to run the town. There's the right way to move things forward, to look for the future and have vision and do what you need to do. And if you have somebody in there who's just worried about getting elected 2 years later, that gets cooled off. I think that affects our town. Voters may not know because they haven't seen the two sides. And I'm saying that.
What we're talking about is insider
I
base.
mean, why do we have 4 years for
understanding
more
of
fighting?
this. Yeah.
Why do we have 4 years for more? It's much more.
I just-
Why not 2 years?
I like to process things in a logical sense. I'm seeing things in categories, so to say. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't understand in this equation is if it's 2 year, and I get it, voters, want to have a say if you got it done. But where is the performance measurement for those 2 years? And it's so hard to say.
That's
It's in the ballot box.
But
Yeah, no, yeah, but
I think we're approaching this backward because it's not just, and I appreciate the dialogue, I really do, because it made me think about it differently. But if you really want someone to be effective at the job, you need to give them time to do the job, first of all.
And
I
Bethel
think
voters
4
have
years,
done that.
4 years allows them to do that because the first year is a learning.
Yeah, but
But the second part of that is the number of people that do not come out and vote.
So as part of what you're saying is the voters don't always have, they may have a base of knowledge, you don't necessarily come out to vote, but they don't necessarily have a real strong base of knowledge to the performance of that person because they're not involved in the business every day. So that's why a 4-year term is more
I
beneficial.
know, don't speak for me that way because that's not quite the way I meant.
Okay.
Because I have always appreciated the job and the work that's done. But one of the things that I like about, and no matter who it was that had 4 years, is we got to know them. I got to know them. There's no, I mean, yes, I don't, term limits, let's just not talk about that right now. Let's just talk about, but someone that's in for 2 years, unless they're really screwing up, you usually do get one.
Everybody does, which is the reason you should do 4 years. If everybody makes it through the second term, then why is this ambiguity? Why?
But not everybody can go through the second term.
Because it sounds like, if you look at the entire history of Bethel, you keep records and the pictures of the walls, there was only one time when we went, wow, glad that was only a 2-year term, we got rid of that guy. One time only in that
No,
entire.
no,
history.
that's not true.
Well, Burke,
Right.
that's
So he had 2 terms.
right, yeah.
And it took 4 years. Republicans to figure out.
They had,
Not all Republicans.
no, what you often find with first selectmen is their first term, everything goes pretty good. Second term, sometimes not so good.
Yeah.
And that's when the voters say, okay, 4 years
So
is
then
enough.
that's why you should do 4 years.
But again, talking about history, so it's
Wait,
only.
wait, shouldn't we give
times.
the president of the United States more than 4 years to run the whole country?
We're not giving him 2, we're giving him 4, so why are we?
No, I'm saying if it's so hard to learn the job of running Bethel.
Yeah.
And we say that we need 4 years to run Bethel, but the president only gives a 4-year term.
It's not
to run a whole
imposed,
country.
John. I think it allows for, because that first year is such a learning curve in general, it gives someone more than 1 year to do what they need to do.
The president of the United States has a heck of a lot more resources. Right? The president of the United States is a true executive, gets to walk in and be a decision maker. And when you think of an executive role, what they're primarily doing is making good decisions.
It's not a town meeting format.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just saying at this, it's a little, I don't have as much support that way. Like if I had a COO, my job would be tremendously easier. I mean, just incredibly easy. But I'm not saying that there's the difference though, because it does take 4 years, like you guys have said. It takes 4 years before the voters all of a sudden like, you're pressured to get rid of this charter. Well, then let's make it 4 years.
On a day-to-day basis, every single department, every single person, every single day, someone asks you your opinion. The more prepared you are, the better prepared you are, the better able you are to render that opinion. And I think with the first year, you have to spend a lot of time asking people for the background to facilitate that opinion. After a period of time, you at least have enough under your belt to render solid, educated opinions.
Okay, so then you're not campaigning, you're just doing a good job, and that gets
Talking
you.
about the job.
No, I'm saying, but that gets you through the second term and the third term and the fourth term, like Van Knickerbocker did. So you're right. The first year, you're worried about your job and you're worried about funding and campaigning. And then the second year, you just
That's
do
not
a
what
good.
I'm talking about campaigning at all.
Okay.
I'm talking about the job.
Okay, because so far I heard that you're thinking about campaigning
No,
while you're doing your job. That's
when
what
I
I
got
heard.
to the second year, there was a lot of pull for me to get out on the street, walk door to door, do a lot of things.
So that's campaigning.
But when would I do that if I was doing my job? Which is part of the problem.
No, I know. So what I'm
When
saying.
would I do that? I obviously didn't do it enough.
No, what I'm
So
saying
there,
is,
because
no,
I was
no,
going through
I
that.
totally get it. What I'm saying is the first year, you've got to do that. And that really sucks, right? You got to do that. But year two,
First year, you're
I'm sorry. The first term, you've got to campaign a year into it. But as soon as everybody says, oh, she's pretty solid, we're good here. That by doing a good job, you're campaigning for the second term and the third term. And you have to campaign less.
That's true for every board in town.
Well, right, that's my point.
And they all have 4 years, except the first selectman.
Now let's talk about
But there's more board members. Board of Finance, I'm here all night long, but there's 7 of us in there making decisions all night long.
Which
Not
also led to the 5.
That's fair, but there's 2 different discussions here.
Yeah, but I want to understand.
And Alice, tonight, I'm more in favor of maybe having more selectmen, because the testimony has been compelling. It makes sense, okay, but we're talking about 2 and 4 on the first selection.
Now, why, so let's make it a comparison now. Why is it that the Board of Finance is 4 years and the selectmen, why is there such a discerning?
Because there's 4-year terms, but you're rotating.
Yeah, but why would a finance board be able to have a 4-year term? I would assume, because it takes a long time.
Because there's more members, but every 2 years,
years you have
new board members. So
You're talking politics, okay? Let's talk about we're answering the question. Let's talk about how the board functions. Right? I love it that it's 4-year term on the Board of Finance, and the reason is you give people an opportunity to really understand budget,
Learn the budget.
and learn the budgets. They dig into it.
Well, look at planning and zoning. Good Lord, that takes at least a year to learn those regulations.
Because that,
took me 3 hours.
what happens on the Board of Finance with longer terms, even though you have people moving on and off, right? What you are doing is you're creating a little more stability over a period of time. And that's all I'm asking about for selectmen's office. I'm saying, listen, we need that stability in making decisions in town. And the 4 years gives people the opportunity. It's not so much that I gotta run around and campaign next year. Listen, I think you guys know I'm gonna run, I'm gonna hit it hard, that's fine. I don't feel like that's gonna take away from my job. What takes away from my job is the uncertainty of the future. Decision-making is harder because yes, it creeps in about, oh, I can't do this now. And the town employees are very uncertain. I've spent the day, oh, please, I don't be running next year, I don't want them worried about when I'm running next year. I want to focus on the job for a few years.
It definitely affects time.
And yeah, and it takes time, like, to get some of these things through. And by the way, Then you have somebody turn around right after, and let's say they're not very good, or they come in and I haven't had an opportunity to get something done. Well, now it just dies on the vine, or it doesn't get done, and we wasted all this time.
Which is what happens.
So-
Which- You could use my,
So that's where it's not so much that I'm worried about my time or whatever. It's legitimately like, how do I provide the best vision for the town? How do I really go forward? And listen, I'm in the worst possible spot to be recommending this, right? Because I don't know, to be honest, I'm not gonna be here forever. I wasn't like looking forever. I mean, if this goes through, I'm committed in 27 to run for 4 years. I'm not even saying that's the best thing for me, to be honest. Best thing for the town, best thing for the vision, best thing for the future, the stability. We are not Mayberry anymore. I don't think we need, every 2 years just for the voters to run in these. I think there's a cost. How many things would Matt Knickerbocker have accomplished in 13 years if half of those he weren't running for office, maybe?
Yeah, but he had a run for election every 2 years. And he-
That's what I'm saying.
Right. How many more things would he accomplish?
Yes.
If
Would
he
have been
was
much better
running
if
for,
He didn't have that.
if he ran 3 times
That wasn't hanging over his head.
instead of.
But he got by that obstacle.
Yeah, what I'm not saying is, you get by the obstacle of running. I am going to win in 25. I'll tell you, I'm going to work hard, put it up. I'm going to win. I'm going to work hard as I can. It's not going to affect my day-to-day job. The issue is the long-term opportunity to do things that matter and pull through a vision takes 4 years. I'm the executive of a $90 million entity. And I've got to worry about re-interviewing with 12,800 people in 2 years. Like that uncertainty and what my town employees feel, that's what I'm talking about. You need some time. You already said the voter is not going to necessarily come in and throw me out if I'm doing a good job. They're probably going to do it 2 years after, in 27, if they think I'm not making the cut. That's when they're going to
and
talk.
voters are fickle. I mean, they really are fickle.
That's it. And I don't want to get it.
But you're running as a party, right? So
Yes and no.
I thought
I
they should
mean,
get
there's
this.
people that didn't know what Party Matt was for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
no, I mean, you're running as a vision, as a team. It's not necessarily the first selectman and you're running me. It's a Republican Board of Finance. It's the whole picture.
but
So it's not just-
we have not won the under ticket for a very long time. Matt won, Matt Rich won. But you all won all the boards and commissions.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily apply because for whatever reason. So the politics of it is something else other than getting back to the question of, is 4 years good for the town?
Right.
Does it make sense for the board, the first selectman to be a 4-year term? How to get rid of him it's that much more important to elect the right person the first time, which doesn't always happen. But I think if you have checks and balances within the Board of Selectmen as a whole, it would mitigate a lot of that. Day to day, there's certain professional laws that are in place that don't allow you to just jettison somebody from their job.
Well, that's an HR issue, but there's a lot of other
that's-
things that could go sideways with the first
You're
selectman.
absolutely right, and they have. They have.
So.
I mean, some of us
We talked
feel like
about
we
the pros and
survived
cons.
4 years.
We've talked about all the pros and all the reasons why 4 years is good for Bethel. Ad nauseam at this point. I think that we're clear on that. The only bad thing about it is if we have a bad person in that position, we can't get them out for 4 years. So what?
Well, so what?
So,
No, I meant,
Compared to all the other good reasons, that's a very small thing. First of all, it's hardly ever happened in the history of Bethel. Secondly, we have a lot of other checks and balances that we can make sure that it doesn't really matter. The bad person is not going to be able to do too many bad things. We've been through it. We lived through it. Everything was fine. Board of Finance can continue to do their job, so on and so on. So it wasn't the best, but we got through it.
So Penny hasn't been in on this discussion, so I suggest, we're going to have to probably take another
Okay. Yeah.
stab at it.
yeah, I'd like to think about all the things that people talk
But
about.
the other thing I thought I would just bring up about the 5-person board is that when Charlie Steck was in office, here's someone who came from business, came into government, and he was trying to run the government like a business, and he was running into a lot of trouble with freedom of information. He would have meetings with, say, him and John Thiel, and maybe they would bring in someone else, and it would be an illegal meeting. They'd be called on it. They were having constant problems. if you had a five, and you can, and the first selectman could never meet with the minority selectman, because that would be a legal meeting. So by having a five-person board, the first selectman can meet with
One
the
person.
minority, or they can meet with, you know, everyone in their party as caucus. But but you don't run into problems that Charlie separated.
So I'll go put this out there. There is a state law under FOI that Rich Drake and I can form and have a majority caucus. So I'm allowed to talk to Brian, and I'm allowed to talk to Rich. So I talk to Rich now, it's a grown-up world, right? I talk to Rich and keep it about what's going on, and I need to be able to talk to him, because if Brian's not around, I can't say it's a legal meeting, right? If there's an event going on and I want to delegate my authority to Rich, I don't have to do my email. But that is an FOI, just for our situation because we have three selectors.
That's
Okay.
awful, that's really awkward.
Pardon?
It's awkward.
Yeah, but that's
It's doable, but it's
It's
awkward.
doable. Yeah, I'm just being honest, that it does exist, that it hasn't impeded our ability to have discussions. Because we're a three-member board of selectmen, and that exists in FOI for that reason.
The other point
I have
that,
one question about five-member board and the word transparency. I can understand diversity of opinion, but transparency, I don't understand. Why is the word transparent to have five? I mean, isn't that same as the three? Transparent?
Well, transparency or productivity?
No,
transparency is a
the
specific.
question was the transparency.
Transparency, the word transparency.
Why is it
It's
more
clear.
transparent?
It's clear with either 3 or 5, right?
Well, I think a 3 will lead to less dialogue. And if dialogue equates to transparency,
You mean
Then-
developing ideas?
developing ideas, be able to, because if you're the odd man out and you can voice all your opinion you want, but if, you know, the majority party is gonna just roll over the top of you, at some point you shut your mouth. So, I think that there isn't a relationship to transparency, because if you have dialogue, you have debate, you have.
Judy used to say to me all the time, I can count. And there was no reason for that. I mean, I wanted open discussion, but that open discussion often would end up with a 2-to-1 vote in some form or another. That's not okay. You should be able to have a real discussion in public, in front of people, where they can really hear what your thoughts are, instead of just assuming that.
But that was her decision not to speak up. She perfectly could.
Yeah, but come on, in reality, if everybody's knocking over the head, sooner or later, shut your mouth. Because every meeting you go to, if you're overruled, nobody wants to hear it. Oh, yeah, it's just.
No matter how polite you
Tweety
are.
bird.
Well, that could
Tweety bird in your
happen.
ear. Yeah, but I'm just saying, with a 5, now whether it's right or wrong, I haven't, in my mind, made it up, because I think there's some reason why a 3, you can maybe get things done quicker, and like you alluded to. But on the other side of it, a 5 certainly lends to more dialogue and maybe more productivity.
Maybe last Friday does spinning the wheels.
Yeah, we have, transparent, we're transparent, and any first selectman or any.
This is not accusatory.
No, I'm just saying, should be, encouraging dialogue, not calling the question, right? We do Robert's rules, so if there's a debate and the 3 of us are in, because sometimes we don't always agree, I agree more with Rich and I agree with Brian, right? If we're having a debate, there's the time where we table stuff but we don't call the question. We don't just overrule and say, okay, sit on your hands and be quiet. That shouldn't happen. Same thing could happen in a majority on a board of 5.
Yep.
They can just call the question and they can shut down the debate anytime they really want. Bad form, I think it would look bad in public, like in the legislature, they never do that.
It's less apt to happen though with 5 than 3.
It's more apt to happen in 5 than 3. Because if it gets contentious.
You're still gonna have a majority.
Yeah, I think the majority will, okay, we're done.
Right.
Good, I mean, in the legislature.
It's even worse if you caucus outside and then you come into the meeting with 5, or, I'm sorry, with 3.
I'm under.
Caucus. No, all the same parties out there, and and the meeting started in a half hour before, they come in, and it looks even worse when there's two sitting there counting.
Right.
But, well, I answered your question. That's my feeling is I think that there's more public dialogue with more people. And it's a step to broaden representation a little bit. I mean, you could conceivably, I felt strongly about more people in that particular case because it's really tough to work with.
If you have independent thinkers and there's a board of five, I mean, you have to then convince one more that.
Right now,
It's not
every
about
vote is a majority vote, because it's always 2-1. I mean, if you're voting party lines. So anytime there's a 2-1, it's always going to be majority rules. If you have 5 people voting, you might have 4 against 1. You might have 2
No,
from
you
one
can-
party, 1 from the other party.
But
against
Well,
the
but
other.
still,
More
representation
transparency.
would
in
limit that.
It means discussion in the vote, not the representation.
Right. You can see that there were maybe, it wasn't divided along party lines perhaps. So there's more transparency in that you can get an idea of what the people were thinking. Because now you have more people in each party. They might not agree with each other.
There was a prior charter revision commission that had proposed a 5-person board. And remember, the process is the Board of Selectmen appoint the Charter Revision Commission comes up with ideas, sends it to the Board of Selectmen. They can send it back saying, we consider this, that, or the other, and they deliberate on that. It goes back to the Board of Selectmen. Then the Board of Selectmen can accept it and then not even send it to a vote. So they can kind of block it. But there was a Charter Revision Commission where we proposed a 5-member Board of Selectmen. And it got blocked from going to a vote. And I think part of it was, if you think about a Board of Selectmen, great. They each have 1/3 power. And if you go to 5, they have 20% power each. And I don't know whether that was the reason or they decided they just wanted to keep the 3, but they basically threw the baby out with the bathwater.
I think that's one of the great things about having the kind of dialogue that we're having is that we can at least come to as much of a consensus as we possibly can. And then ultimately the voters are going to be the ones that we hear from.
One thing I felt was curious about is, I went to some of the public hearings that the prior commission held, and there was a lot of comment from the public about pushing for a 4-year term. And we never saw that. Other than that, we didn't see that crowd come back out. Those same people.
Interesting.
Well,
Well, the town has changed since the pandemic, I'll tell you.
Those people that were speaking in favor of it are still living in town. So they're still- Yeah, but I don't think people
I would just,
are paying attention.
if we could close this topic down, I would just ask that everybody, leave their politics at the door when it comes to things on this commission. Would like to hope that everybody thinks without politics.
I think everyone is.
And from
Are
what
you
you have.
insinuating?
Do you have a different feeling about that? Because
No.
I don't feel that.
Right.
I think
No,
we're all doing fine.
I just, to a certain degree, I hear a lot about politics and things, and I know it plays part of it, but I just.
This is a 2-party system.
I understand that, but the Charter Revision Commission is a little different than other commissions.
I assumed it was descriptive rather than,
Right.
it was a description.
Well, I'm sorry if I'm.
I'm sorry if I let you feel that I felt that kind of, I've worked with so many of you for years.
Yeah.
So I did not, when I mentioned politics, I mentioned it as a description of,
Right.
sort of, when we talk about minority representation, is that political? Well, you have to have 3-2. Yeah, I guess
It's a process.
it's the process.
Or do you think that we've been mentioning names or alluding?
Well,
to
I could,
people?
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop that. If anybody feels that I was, insinuating that politics are taking part. There
I
is
don't
some,
want you to
that,
feel bad.
well, I can say, since everyone wants to talk about it, I can feel that there was some political influence, certainly in the very beginning of these meetings. I think we're all smart people, and I think the dialogue is great. I like tonight because I think we can have difference of opinions and really talk these things out in a rational way and agree to disagree on something. And I don't know, I just would just hope everybody keeps an open mind, because I am for certain on all of this stuff. And we're early in this process.
You may be perceiving the politics. I don't think you were.
Well, okay.
But we're
We
all,
come with history, you know, we come with.
So some of it is,
sometimes
yeah,
difficult.
which is also part of the reason why we're on this board.
Right.
We want people with a long history, with understanding how the town runs.
and I may have opened that door by bringing up my administration, because but the dynamic of how that unfolded, I thought was the kind of history that might be a scenario that went south, that you could learn why.
History.
That it's just
History.
history.
I get it, totally.
Okay,
I
so
thought it was
I did not. mean
Listen,
to be
I agree with,
partisan.
All of your dialogue, I think is very helpful in understanding the past. Because, I think the biggest takeaway, at least for me, during this conversation, may be different than others, that a 2-year term has its pros and cons, but one of the biggest pro I see is that it allows a CEO to make difficult decisions absent things that may skew his distraction related to his own self-preservation. And as much as Dan or anybody else sit in that position and say, oh, that would never make it, common sense says to me that if I want to know what my future is in the next 6 months, a year, that it does have some level of influence. And I think for a 4-year term, now whether or not that pro outweighs everything else, I don't know, but I think that it is important to at least acknowledge that a 4-year term allows a boss to be a boss for whatever that value is.
You know, I think there's another thing here too. With all our history, I think we with the history are realizing the demographic of the town is definitely changing. And we see that in all the new buildings and people coming in. So maybe our old history is going to have to be changing. And some of these points are going to be more attractive to the newer voters. They may not be young voters, or maybe older voters coming in, who can afford these homes. And things are changing.
They are younger.
So my perspective.
No, we're just older.
No. My perspective is we're not doing this for Dan, or in regards to how Dan is governing or how Matt governs. We're writing this for 50 years from now, for people we don't even know. And we want to make sure this works for all parties, for all kinds of people, for all styles of governing, because every personal life is different. And we might be using these examples. I think it's valuable in hearing the experience. We're very lucky to have Alice with her experience. That's all it is. It's an example. And we need to extrapolate from that and think about what is the town going to be like in 50 years? Who's coming into all these houses and how are they different from people who've been here?
And that speaks to the point that I think that there was a concern that a lot of people felt that this was a step toward a mayor council form of government, which I think would be a horrible idea.
Yeah.
I think the 4-year term with 5 people is a big enough step for this town to take at this point that would solve some of the working problems that I find it an improvement, but I'm really happy to sit on this issue until we've got Penny here, until we get, maybe if we throw it out to people toward the end. I mean, look at how long we're going to take to discuss this. We can show.
This is big.
This is a very big one.
And I would say this, because I got more kind of focused in on what I was asked about, right? If I would say one of the other big reasons to think about it, we talk about getting people to run for office. It's a lot easier to get somebody to run for first selectman than come from the corporate world, right? Anywhere with experience, right? And if you person get in and say, listen, I can do it for 4, to do it for 2. Say, oh God, like I don't think I got to do it for 2 years. I got to run again. But if at least they got 4, they feel like they can be invested in something, and I think we will draw more quality candidates.
But it also took me 3 years to decision to run.
Does it?
And what, just,
So I just want
I
to,
wanted to pipe in with that.
Yeah.
I'm counsel, so
Yeah,
I've
I
got.
was reacting more to what everybody's saying, but if I looked at this vision, one of the reasons I started thinking about it, it was about getting the pay of the job to being something reasonable. Give it 4 years so you could draw someone in from the world that's experience and to take a risk. It's a lot easier to say, I'm gonna do a 4-year thing. And then, okay, if I don't get elected, fine, versus saying I'm gonna give it a shot for 2, I'm gonna disrupt my whole life.
and then.
Right.
Because I do think it'll draw more quality candidates out of the woodwork
Yeah, that's a good point.
when you have 4 years.
but I do want to tell you about a couple of past charter revision commissions with this. First one was when Burke was in office. 4-year term came up, was discussed by the group, and actually the board of selectmen had put 2 town employees on the charter revision commission. The 2 town employees were vehemently against having a 4-year term. No, every 2 years, the voters have to be able to vote them out. One of those 2 people, 5 years later, get on another charter revision commission when Matt was the first selectman, and all of a sudden it was the greatest idea in the world. And so the point is, a good provision for charter should be good no matter who's in office.
Right,
It
correct.
shouldn't make any difference. So again, I've got great respect for you coming out when you haven't changed your position. I think you were in favor of a 4-year term 2 years ago when Matt was in office.
Talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
You weren't? So
No, I,
you and Karen were in favor of the 4-year term? No?
4 years ago, I never.
They weren't on the commission.
Oh, that's not much
I'm not saying you were on the charter. You were in the peanut gallery. Did you support that?
Yes, but I would have always supported it once he was out of office. I would have had it be for,
That's my point. That it was, if
thinking about.
you
I wasn't
thought,
thinking about
Yes,
that.
I would
if
have supported
you
that.
thought it was a good idea when Matt was in office and you still think it's a good idea, to me, that's the measure of it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a good idea regardless of whether your guy is in office.
And listen, maybe that's something that you said, do it the election following the adoption of charter, or do it the election following whatever the
When
current.
you
person
say
is.
2027, it makes it
If we-
sound, even though it is exactly when it would happen. If you say 2027, then at least it has the appearance of not having any kind of favoritism one way or
Yeah.
another. Yeah, we're not gonna do it this time, and we're just gonna have to do it next time. Or however we want to set it up so that it appears on paper. I mean, the reality of who runs, and I don't care. I'm just talking about removing it from the current person.
Right.
So that it doesn't look like we're just going, we want to keep that guy in office as long as we
Right.
100%. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Whatever the commission does, it just needs to
can. I
be
think.
not about my situation. I know that I've laid in and I've chosen, but I do think for the value of the town at some point, you gotta, wherever that is.
Well, hey, I think we got a lot of things to chew on in our mind over there.
I think so. And, we kind of pointed out around 9 o'clock would be our cutoff time. But we certainly jumped into some of the big pieces here. So we covered those first 2.2-5, 3.3, and 3-4. And we'll
It seems so little.
You guys aren't giving me a lot of voice. Take the advice. Of course, the other stuff's pretty simple.
I apologize for jumping on the phone there for a second. My friend from Florida told me that she was flying all that.
Oh,
Yeah, I've got my brothers down there.
I have a friend of mine who's.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
My friend Carol.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Jen.
Mother
Good night.
will not be.
Yeah, my brother's.
Reading a lot of it.
He's in Tampa.
My brother has the.